Hello and welcome to Paper Plays Julie K.
Welcome everyone to the 16th and final installment of Creating with Window Envelopes. And for today's episode, I am sharing again my final idea on how to use window envelopes. And if for some reason I come across any other really cool ideas besides, of course, just using them as basic pockets in your journal, I will definitely share some more videos. But for right now, I'm kind of out of ideas. And so, again, I'm just calling this my final episode for my window envelope series. And if you have missed my previous videos, I do have them linked all below in the description box. So if you open up the description box, you should be able to find them. And for today's episode, I am going to share with you guys how to create a waterfall element for our junk journals using window envelope. And I have a sample to show with you guys, and then also the one that we will be creating in the tutorial part. And so this one right here is the first one that I created to try this idea out. Creating a waterfall element in our junk journals isn't anything new. A lot of people have done it, and it's really popular in like the mini album community. A lot of people use them to showcase their photos. So this idea has been around for a long time. I just thought it would be a great idea to use my window envelopes and create a waterfall envelope element to my journals. And basically what that means is all these kind of look like a waterfall. They just kind of fall down, I believe is why they call it waterfall, or the name of the technique. And so this one is a sample that I wanted to share with you guys that I did finish decorating. I added laces and a couple little embellishments. And if anybody's wondering what this paper line is, it's a scrapbooking paper line. It's from Simple Stories, and it's called Simple Vintage Ancestry. And so the paper all came from there, and then even all these little pieces right here were also from the coordinating paper, just some little die cuts that came with it. And so I did decorate using those. And these, of course, are window envelopes, and each window envelope does have a journal card inside of it, which I think is really fun. You can see some music paper behind it, and the journal cards I did leave relatively plain, just so that you could actually use them as journal cards. And usually I like to put something behind my windows. So these ones had these little cut apart elements that were part of the paper collection, and so I just used those for behind the windows. And you can just see I added some of those little bits and pieces of ephemera on the sides of each of these. But each of these then will flip up, and then you can use some paper on the back side. And for the back side of all these, the paper that I used came from this Prima paper pad called Printery. It's a really old paper collection, and I just used some of the ones that had lines or were really neutral that I could use, because I do like to add as much journal space as I can on elements like this. And so the back sides of the paper I did do that with. Again, each of these envelopes are window envelopes. They're the same with the journal cards on them. And these journal cards I did choose to stencil on them. And I believe the stencil also is from Prima that I used. So that one would flip up. And again, there's some lined paper there. This one, again, the journal card comes out. You can journal on both sides. And this one flips up. And then this is my final one that you could flip up. And again, the journal card does come out. And then you could also journal on this really bottom part also. And so for these, I did choose to just add them onto a piece of scrapbooking paper. The back side of it has these umbrellas on it, but the front side, it was kind of graph paper. It was a scrapbooking paper. I'm not quite sure where it's from. But you could definitely do this and just glue these window envelopes directly into your journal. But just for the sake of this video and tutorial, I glued them down onto a piece of paper, which then in turn, if you had them in a journal, and so here's a journal I'm just starting to work on, you could just glue this whole paper down, and then you would have your little element for your journal. And so that was the first one that I created. And then the one that I'm doing in my tutorial part of this looks like this. I didn't finish decorating this just because I'm not quite sure where I want to take them. But I did just do some basic decorating of just covering them with the paper. So again, these ones flip up. All of the journal cards come out. And I just did some rubber stamping, and all the rubber stamps are from Hero Arts. And the paper line that I used for this one comes from Hampton Art, and it's called Vintage Charm Paper Pad. It's one that I picked up at a rummage sale about a year or so ago. And so these ones, again, I just used 4 envelopes. You could add more envelopes if you wanted to, or you could also change the orientation and have them, you know, flip up like this. But I chose to do it this way. And so I just chose neutral paper from that paper collection so that you could journal on the back sides. And again, I used the same little journal, lined journal pages on the inside. And if anybody's wondering, the paper that I use on the inside, that's just some Project Life cards I found at the thrift store for $1.99. And I just cut them down to size. I like the fact that they had the lines on them. And I use the same ones for here. And these ones I took it up a notch and I actually just stenciled on them just to make them a little bit more interesting. These ones I left plain. And so just to finish off this one, flipping it up, there's some lined paper there. And the final one. And then this one flips up too. And you could also journal down here. And again, all the journal cards come out. And so if you're interested in watching the tutorial part, this again is the one that we will be creating together. And so if you stay tuned, I will go through the instructions on how to put one of these together. So thank you again, everybody, so much for watching. To create your very own window envelope waterfall, you will need several envelopes. I'm going to choose to use 4 different window envelopes on this project today. And so again, you want to start off with whatever window envelopes that you have, but I am working with envelopes that measure 8 5/8 by 3 5/8, and I'm going to cut them down to size. And I'm going to cut them down to a size that I think will work inside of a journal. And so what I'm going to end up doing is, because I want it to be somewhat centered and I want my window envelope showing, I'm going to go out about 1/2 inch from both sides of the window envelope and I'm going to trim. And my window envelope is still open. And again, once you cut off this bottom piece or one of the pieces, you can definitely use this piece, just seal it up and you have a nice little pocket for your journal. So here is what we ended up with once we've cut all the sides off. And this one does measure approximately 5 inches across. And again, it'll be about 3 5/8 that way. And your next step is to decide how many window envelopes you want to use in your waterfall project. And for me, I'm going to use 4. So you'll want to make sure you have 4 envelopes that look exactly like this, that are cut the same. And I do have some already pre-done. And this is my 4th one. And so I'm going to decorate or show you how to put this one together. And then we'll go ahead and attach all 4 pieces to our final project. But I found it easier to go ahead and kind of do an assembly line and do everything the same. So I went ahead and cut all 4 envelopes and then I decorated them kind of all similar and then I put them together. Just so in case you guys are wanting to follow along. And then also the next step is to decide which way you want your window envelope to be. If you want it when you have your waterfall, like here is a sample one. And you can see the window envelopes more at the top. So you need to decide if you wanted it up at the top or if you want it this way. Or if you wanted to, you could also do a waterfall this way also, or that way. So you just need to decide on your orientation before you start decorating. So the first step that I like to do is, and this is why I haven't sealed my envelope up yet, is because I do like to have something when you pull out your journal card inside of your envelope. I do like to have something showing behind my window envelope. And so I do have some scrap music paper. And so my orientation is going to be up here this way. And so I'm just going to check if I have some music paper that will kind of look nice, that you can actually see the music notes for, and you can see them that way. So I'll go ahead and use this piece of paper. And so I'm just going to grab a scratch piece of paper and a glue stick, and I'm going to go ahead and glue this down to the bottom right here. And once I have that done, I'm going to go ahead and seal up this envelope. And so I'm also going to decide on if I'm going to add a journal card to it, like on these ones right here, which side I want to leave open. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this side open. So I'm going to add just a little bit of glue around the edges here first. And for that, I just like to use tacky glue, and I'm going to go as close as I possibly can to the edge. And I'll close that up. And then I'm also going to close up this part of the envelope, and for that I'm just going to use a glue stick. And there's still a little bit of glue on the back side of that envelope, or the music paper. And so now I have that sealed up with an opening on this side. So once it is sealed up, you can go ahead and add a base paper to the cover if you like. And I went ahead and already pre-cut this one out to make it a little bit easier. But I do, and I've talked about this in some of my other window envelope series, I do usually start off with some sort of template to make it easier. And so what I did is I just centered this on a piece of paper and I cut out the middle. If you look really close, you can maybe see my pencil lines, and I just like to cut on the inside of my pencil lines. That way it makes it easier to layer this on top. And so I'm going to go ahead and add glue then to the front of this, and then I'm going to glue this down, and then I'll cut it to size. You can also, if you like to decorate, if you like to do collage style decorating, you could also glue different paper strips down and decorate your front. If you like to go a little bit more simple, you could just obviously like maybe tea dye or coffee dye your window envelopes and maybe stamp on them or stencil on them. You don't have to put a piece of paper on them if you don't like to. You just decorate them however you feel comfortable. And so I'm just going to go ahead and lay this down on top. So now I have a perfect fit. So I'm going to go ahead and trim off the parts that I don't want on there. And when you trim, you want to make sure that you're not going to actually cut your envelope open. So just make sure you're aware of that when you're trimming. You can use a scissors, or I like to use a paper cutter because I don't cut very straight. So the next step is to go ahead and decorate the back side. And again, we're creating a waterfall. And so it's going to flip up this way. And so the biggest thing is when you decorate your back side is you want to make sure, you want to check your orientation of your paper. If it's a paper pattern or just something with lines, it doesn't really matter. But if you have like flowers or something that needs to be right side up, you do want to think about that. So this will flip up this way. And so I want to make sure that I have my paper orientated that way. For today's episode, I just did a really basic paper, so it doesn't really matter. But before we glue this down, I like to glue my tabs down. Again, you can see when this one flips up, I have a tab right here. And part of the tab is underneath this top paper. You could, if you wanted to, just go ahead and glue this like this also. But I like to just put it under, half of it underneath. So I'm going to go ahead and glue my little tab down here, and all it is a paper strip mine is 1 inch wide, and then I fold it in half. And this one I'll have to cut down. I just cut it off of the top of some of the paper. And in case anybody is wondering, the paper collection I'm using today is from this company. It's KI, and it's called Vintage Charm. I've had it in my stash for a while, and actually it looks like it came from Hampton Art. I picked it up at a rummage sale, and so I've had it in my stash for a while. And for this, I'm just going to use a little bit of tacky glue to glue it down. And I'm just putting glue on 1/2 of the fold, or 1/2 of the paper strip. And so I'm just going to, because it's going to flip, so I just want to glue it down here, and I want to line it up with the edge of my envelope. So my fold is right there on the edge. So it should fold down like this easily. Then I'm just going to clean this up because, again, my piece of paper was a little bit too long, my little tab here. And so that's kind of what I have. Here's the front. Here's the pocket, if I can get it open. Hopefully I didn't. Okay. So here's what it looks like from the top view once you lifted your tab up. Here's where my pocket is again, and then on the back side this is kind of what it looks like. And when it gets glued down, it'll flip up this way. And so if you want to, I'm going to go ahead and glue this sheet on top, but I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to ink my edges a little bit. And I'm just using some Vintage Photo Distress ink. And it looks like I have a little bit still hanging over this paper. I didn't cut it quite right, so I'm just going to trim that little bit off. And again, just use your paper cutter or your scissors. And again, you just want to be careful not to cut your envelope, otherwise you'll have to glue it shut again. So I'm just going to double check and make sure I didn't accidentally cut it, and I didn't. And since I trimmed off some of my inked edges, I'm going to go ahead and just ink it again just a little bit. So this is what we have so far. You can see the little flap right here, or hinge, and it opens up this way, so it'll flip up this way into our final journal. And at this point, if you want to go ahead and add a journal card to it, you can do that, or you can do that at the very end. I already have one that I created, and what I ended up doing is at the thrift store I found these Project Life cards that have lines on them, which I thought was really cool. I found this whole box for $1.99, and I just cut them down to size. And then from there, once I had them cut down to size, I kind of measured them out, and I wanted to make sure that I could see something through the window. So whether you add an image, or this time I chose to use some rubber stamps in my window envelopes, and these are all from Hero Arts Company, the ones that I'm using for today. And I don't know if they were all part of a couple different sets. And so I just chose the words harmony, love, hope, and serenity for all of mine. And so this one has the word hope on it. And for my waterfall today, I wanted 4 pieces, or 4 envelopes. And so I just have to decide what order I want them in. And so I have 2 that are the same, basically. So I'll do them every other. So I think I'm going to do that, and that. So that's how I want them to lay in my journal. You can also see on this one, I did go ahead and do some more decorating, and I added some trim. And on these ones, I'm just going to leave them plain. I'm not going to do any more decorating with you guys because I'm not quite sure what I want to do with them. If I want to do something a little bit more steampunky or vintage, I haven't decided. So I'll just wait to decorate them until they find their home in a journal. But I did want to show you guys this one that I created that had some decorating on it. So you can also decide if you want to decorate them before you put them into your journal. And then also the next step to decide is on these ones, I glued them onto a piece of paper that I could later glue into my journal. But you could glue these down directly into your journal. And so I just will show you that, but I'm not going to actually glue them down. I'm going to glue them onto a piece of paper with you guys. But if you wanted to glue them into a journal, and here's one I'm working on. These don't match it, but you just find a page, and you would add glue just right here to this top part, and you would glue it down. You decide your orientation, and so you glue that one down, and so of course it'll flip up and you can pull out the journal card. So when you do glue them down, you want to make sure that you have the pocket opening so that you can grab it. It wouldn't make sense to glue it this way because it would be really tough to grab it from the middle. So you want to make sure your pocket opening is on the outside of your paper. And then you would glue your next one down however far down you want. You could kind of arrange them however you want, as close as you want or as far apart as you want. And it just depends upon what's pleasing for your eye. Again, I just have 4 of these, so I would just kind of layer them so that they filled the page and glue them down that way. And so if this were my final page, that's how I would glue them down. So then once they're glued down, you can kind of open them up. And when you open them up, I like to, then I would have a spot to journal up here. And then you had this next one. And then of course you can pull these out and journal on your journal cards on the inside. So that one would be glued down there, and I have a spot to journal on up there. And also with this one, and then this one. And you can see that there's kind of some spaces once I had these laid out the way I wanted them to. Since there's some spaces in between here, I could add a couple more envelopes. It would be easy to do that. But I just thought 4 for now was kind of a nice number, and so that's why I chose 4 for my journal pages. But depending upon your envelope sizes, you could add more if you wanted to. I think you could add another 2 into here easily. But I did want to show you that you can glue these directly down into your journal. But again, for today's little tutorial video, I'm just going to glue them onto a piece of paper, scrapbooking paper that I have. There's some umbrellas on the back side, but I'm going to have this part as being my part that shows. And I'm not quite sure, this is a really old paper collection or a piece of paper I've had in my stash. I'm not sure where this one came from. And let's see, the measurements of this paper, if you guys are curious, are, I made it a little bit over 5 inches, so 5 1/8 maybe, just because I wanted to make sure that these would fit on there. And the length is 7 inches. But again, you could choose whatever size you wanted to. I just wanted to make sure that these would be ones that would fit into my actual journals that I make down the road. And usually my journal pages are no longer than 5 1/2. So usually I'm pretty safe sticking at 5 inches. And so that's why I chose that length. And so I'm just going to kind of lay these out where I want them on my piece of paper. So for sure, I always glue my top one up at the very top of the paper. And what I'm trying to do is I want the window envelope part covered, so you don't really see that until you lift it up. And if you wanted to, you could get a ruler out and measure them out, but I usually just do it by what looks pleasing to my eye. And so I'm just kind of layering them. And again, if you wanted to, you could go ahead and measure in between each of them. But like I said, I just prefer to just kind of eyeball it and just make whatever's pleasing to my eye. So then the next step is I'm going to carefully glue each one of these down. And for that, I'm just going to go ahead and use tacky glue. And so I like to start with the top one. And so I'm going to put glue on the back side of my hinge or my tab. And so that's what it'll look like. And then of course it gets folded over. So I'm going to go ahead and glue that hinge down, and I'm just lining it up with the very top of either my journal page or the top of this piece of paper that I'm gluing these down. And I'm just going to hold this down here for a second so that it stays. I don't want it to move on me before I start gluing my next ones down. And so after you feel like the top one is secured, you're going to go ahead and glue your next one down. And so what I'm going to do for this one is I'm just going to take a pencil and I'm just going to make a mark right here on the left hand side so I kind of know where I want it to line up. And then while I'm penciling, I think I'm going to try and go ahead and also make marks on the rest of these for where I want them glued down. So then I'm going to go ahead and glue this next one down, and again we're going to do the exact same thing. I'm just going to put a little bit of tacky glue on my hinge. And then I'm just going to very carefully kind of glue it down. And since I have that mark there, it made it really easy for me. And then when you flip it up, you should be able to flip it up and then kind of hold your tab or your hinge down. And you just want to make sure that everything moves freely. And again, I would just give that a couple of seconds before you start really playing with it. And since I went ahead and I made my other marks, I can go ahead and glue the next one down. So again, I'm just opening up this tab or this hinge that we have right here. And I'm just putting a little bit of glue right here on the top. So that would be what the back side looks like. As you can see, there's no glue right here. And I'm just holding it and I'm just kind of folding it down. And then I'm lining it up for where I wanted it onto my paper. And again, I'm just going to give it a second or two. I'm going to hold it in place. And then just very carefully lift it up. And then again, just run my fingers along here to make sure that it is nice and secure. And I'm going to go ahead and do that with the last one. So again, I'm going to open up my hinge. So here's the front side and the back side. I'm going to put some glue along the top. Again, I'm just going to hold it in place for a few seconds to make sure that it's secure. And I'm also going to open it up and also give it a good pressing down on. And you can see this bottom one, I kind of lined it up with the very bottom of my paper. So that's our completed window envelope waterfall. And again, you could do some more decorating. And today I'm just choosing not to decorate anymore with you guys. So hopefully you guys are okay with that. I did show you this one at the beginning of the video that was a little bit more heavily decorated. I'm just not sure what I want to do with this one. So I'm just going to leave it as is for right now. But you could definitely add some more steampunk kind of with the numbers on this one. Would look really cute. You could add some clocks or some cogs or some wheels. Or if I wanted to go with more of a vintage theme, I could go with some black and white photos or some more sentiments, or even add some lace at the bottom if I wanted to. And so I'll show you guys kind of what the completed waterfall looks like again. And I do apologize. I know the window envelope part is glaring at times depending upon how I have it set down. So I do apologize for that. So again, each of these have pockets on them. So you can pull out your journal cards. So you'll have these to journal on. And of course, when you pull them out, we have that nice music paper behind it to look at. And then when you flip them up, you can also journal on right here. And so that one flips up, and the next one will flip up. And this one I chose to use some lined paper for journaling. And this one also flips up, and then this one does. So again, I wanted to thank everybody so much for watching today. Hopefully you enjoyed today's tutorial, and also if you fast forwarded through it a little bit, I did mention earlier in the video in my intro that this was going to be my last episode for this window series. I think number 16 is kind of a good number to end on, so I do appreciate all of you guys that have watched it all the way through, or even some of my newer subscribers who have just found it and are working their way back through some of my previous episodes. I do try and link all of my videos from the series below in the description box so you can easily find them. And so again, thank you guys so much for watching all these. Hopefully you've learned a few new ideas on different ways to use window envelopes in your journals. And until next time, I hope you guys all have a wonderful day and happy crafting.